Well, I was originally accused of killing 34 women, but nobody has ever managed to come up with 34 names, jurisdictions, or anything else. It's a false accusation.
December 3rd, 1995, former cop turned serial killer Gerard Schaefer was found stabbed and mutilated in his prison cell. The same brutality he once inflicted had finally caught up with him. This is what happens to corrupt cops in prison.
I wanted to thank everybody for being here and for providing the input you did. Not just the people who were in the courtroom here, but also those who provided written statements.
May 25 of 2020, the world witnessed a tragic 9-minute encounter in Minneapolis that would ignite global protests, forever change police accountability, and set new standards for justice. At the center was Derek Michael Chauvin, a name now synonymous with one of the most high-profile cases of police corruption and abuse of power in modern history. Derek Chauvin was born in 1976 and grew up in Minnesota. He joined the Minneapolis Police Department in 2001 and served for nearly 2 decades. But during those 19 years, Chauvin racked up 18 complaints, and only 2 ever led to any discipline. Each time, it was just a formal letter of reprimand. That pattern of unchecked behavior wouldn't just cost Chauvin everything, it would shake the very system that allowed it to happen. His reputation among colleagues and community members was mixed. Some recalled instances of unnecessarily aggressive behavior, especially during nightclub security shifts involving African American patrons. While Chauvin received commendations for certain police actions, these positive notes were overshadowed by his growing history of excessive force and unresolved complaints. The pivotal moment came when Chauvin, responding to a report of a counterfeit $20 bill, encountered George Floyd. Security footage and multiple witness videos showed Floyd not resisting arrest. Yet, Chauvin pressed his knee into Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, a restraint technique widely condemned by law enforcement experts. Despite Floyd's pleas of, "I can't breathe," Chauvin maintained the pressure long after Floyd became unresponsive.
Please, 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 I can't breathe. Please, man, please, somebody help me.
Bystander videos of the incident quickly spread across social media, sparking outrage and massive protests across the U.S. and around the world. In response, the Minneapolis Police Department fired Chauvin and the 3 other officers involved. Just days later, Chauvin was arrested and charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. Within a week, prosecutors added a second-degree murder charge as pressure mounted nationwide.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
The trial that followed marked several firsts. It was the first time a Minnesota judge authorized cameras for a full criminal trial. The jury, comprised of 6 white people and 6 people of color, found Chauvin guilty on all charges after just 1 day of deliberation. He became the first white Minnesotan police officer convicted of murdering an African American person, and only the second officer ever convicted of murder in Minnesota. Chauvin's sentencing reflected the gravity of his actions. He received 22.5 years for second-degree murder. Later, federal charges for violating George Floyd's civil rights and for a 2017 incident involving excessive force against a minor added another 21 years, to be served concurrently. Tax evasion charges further stained his record, though those sentences run alongside his murder conviction.
This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd.
Prison life has been far from easy for Chauvin. At first, he was kept in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, a measure meant to protect him from other inmates. But even isolation couldn't keep him safe forever. While serving his sentence at FCI Tucson, he was attacked and stabbed 22 times by another inmate. The incident underscored just how dangerous prison can be for high-profile inmates, especially former officers convicted of abuse and corruption. Chauvin's legacy goes far beyond his own fate. His actions sparked sweeping calls for police reform, accountability, and a global reckoning with systemic racism in law enforcement. The city of Minneapolis paid George Floyd's family a $27 million settlement and nearly $9 million more to settle earlier misconduct cases linked to Chauvin. His many appeals have been denied, with both the Minnesota and U.S. Supreme Courts refusing to hear his case. Still, even from behind bars, Chauvin continues to file motions, most recently winning permission to test George Floyd's tissue samples in a final attempt to challenge his federal conviction. The Chauvin case stands as a clear warning to corrupt officers everywhere. It shows that even those shielded for years by the system can eventually be held accountable. His downfall sent shockwaves through law enforcement, forcing departments nationwide to rethink use of force policies and invest in better training and oversight. This story isn't just about one man's fall from grace. It's about a system forced to confront its failures. Chauvin's conviction proved that no one, not even those sworn to uphold the law, is above it. His fate serves as both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for change in the ongoing fight for justice and equality. But Chauvin wasn't the first officer to abuse his badge, and he wouldn't be the last. Years before his case made headlines, another cop had already crossed the line, one whose secret would take decades to uncover.
I'm really shocked that somebody would be saying that I did this. I mean, we had a fight, and so I went and killed her. I mean, come on.
February 1986, Sherry Rasmussen, a talented critical care nurse and newlywed from Los Angeles, was found dead in her Van Nuys home. The scene looked like a botched burglary, with signs of struggle, stacked stereo equipment, and her BMW missing from the driveway. But nothing added up. Sherry's father, Nels Rasmussen, immediately suspected the truth and named his daughter's killer to the police. The prime suspect wasn't a career criminal or some random intruder. It was someone sworn to protect and serve, LAPD officer Stephanie Lazarus. Back in 1981, Lazarus and John Roten, Sherry's future husband, were college sweethearts. While Roten considered it casual, Lazarus saw their relationship as much more. After college, she joined the LAPD, climbing the ranks and earning a reputation as a respectable investigator. But she couldn't let go of Roten. When Roten met Sherry, fell in love, and eventually got engaged, Lazarus unraveled. Her diary entries became darker and her actions more desperate. She confronted Sherry at work, warning her,
"If I can't have John, no one else will, including you."
Sherry reported being stalked, sometimes by someone disguised as a young man. As the wedding approached, mysterious hang-up calls plagued the couple's home. On the morning of February 24, 1986, Stephanie Lazarus had the day off. Later that afternoon, neighbors noticed something strange. The Rotens' garage door was open and their car was missing. Sherry's purse was later found by gardeners in the complex. By evening, John Roten came home to a nightmare. His wife was dead, and their home had become a crime scene. The LAPD quickly ruled it a burglary gone wrong. They focused on two male suspects seen in a nearby break-in. The bite mark on Sherry's arm, a classic in female-on-female violence cases, was dismissed. Plus, the fact that only Sherry's marriage license was missing seemed puzzling. Roten's ex-girlfriend, now a fellow officer, wasn't even interviewed as a suspect. As the years went by, the case went cold. But Sherry's father, Nels Rasmussen, never stopped fighting. He wrote letters to police chiefs, kept detailed records, and urged detectives to test the evidence again. Then, in the late 1990s, a new cold case squad uncovered a forgotten bite mark swab taken from Sherry's arm. The DNA profile they found was shocking. It belonged to a woman. Despite this, the LAPD stuck to the burglary theory. Evidence magically disappeared, case files were altered, and crucial leads were ignored. Meanwhile, Lazarus thrived. She joined the elite art theft unit, became a department instructor, married another officer, and adopted a child, all while her victim's family suffered. 2009, everything changed when a new set of detectives took another look. They built a list of female suspects and quickly eliminated all but one, Lazarus. Surveillance teams collected her DNA from a discarded cup. It matched the bite mark. And just like that, the net finally closed in. Lazarus was brought in under a ruse, an art theft case, to ensure she was unarmed. At first, she claimed she barely knew Rasmussen.
It's 2009 now.
Had you ever met his wife?
I may have.
Do you remember her name or anything, or?
But as the interrogation continued, details slipped. When confronted with the DNA evidence, she refused to provide a sample. Minutes later, she was arrested. The trial revealed a calculated killer. Lazarus had reported her backup gun stolen weeks after the murder. The same model and ammunition used in the killing. She had access to police databases to track Rutan. And well, she also knew how to stage a crime scene. But the most damning evidence was her own words. Diary entries showed obsession. That and family testimony revealed stalking. And finally, the DNA sealed her fate. 2012, Lazarus was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 27 years to life. The story might have ended there, but the cover-up questions remained. Evidence suggested police insiders helped her evade justice. After all, there were files that went missing, DNA samples disappeared, and case records were altered. Even in prison, Lazarus continued to manipulate the system. 2023, facing parole, she finally confessed. But her story didn't match the evidence. She claimed a spontaneous fight, but the crime scene showed clear planning. She blamed a hellacious bar fight, but forensic evidence contradicted her version. The parole board saw through her lies. They cited her continued minimization of the crime and lack of genuine remorse. The board wrote,
"You were the only one engaging in this extreme act of violence."
Her parole was denied, with the next hearing set for 2028. Stephanie Lazarus represents the ultimate corruption, an officer who used her badge to steal a life, then manipulated her way through the system for decades. Her story is a warning about blind trust in authority and the dangers of police culture that protects its own at any cost. Lazarus's double life stunned the nation, but across the country, another cop was writing his own dark story, one that would end with the disappearance of his wife and a lifetime behind bars.
I promise, unless you marry me, I'm making a joke.
I will guarantee you that something happened, my friend.
January 5th, 1954, Police Sergeant Drew Walter Peterson from Bolingbrook, Illinois, started his career in law enforcement, a career that would end with him behind bars, serving time for murder and attempted murder for hire. Peterson seemed like any other suburban police officer, but his personal life was anything but ordinary. He married his high school sweetheart, Carol Brown, in 1974, but after 6 years and 2 children, the marriage ended in divorce due to his infidelity. His next marriage to Vicki Connolly in 1982 lasted a decade. During this time, Connolly alleged years of domestic violence, claiming Peterson threatened to kill her and make it look like an accident. Their relationship ended when she discovered his affair with Kathleen Savio, who would later become his third wife. 1992, Peterson married Kathleen Savio, and they had 2 sons together. But behind closed doors, their marriage was volatile. Police were called to their home 18 times between 2002 and 2004 for domestic disputes. Then, in March 2004, just months after their divorce, Kathleen was found dead in a dry bathtub, a deep gash on her scalp. At first, investigators ruled it an accidental drowning. Not long after Kathleen's death, Peterson married 19-year-old Stacey Ann Kales. They had 2 children together, but by 2007, their marriage was falling apart, and Stacey was talking about divorce. Then, on October 28, 2007, she vanished without a trace. Peterson insisted she'd run off with another man, but her family and investigators suspected something far darker. Stacey's disappearance forced investigators to take another look at Kathleen Savio's death. A second autopsy revealed clear signs of a struggle, and the case was reclassified as a homicide. May 2009, Drew Peterson was finally indicted for Kathleen's murder. The trial leaned heavily on hearsay evidence, much of it allowed under Illinois' new Drew's Law. The law, named after Peterson himself, let prosecutors use statements from witnesses who were unavailable to testify, including his missing fourth wife, Stacy Peterson. Both Kathleen and Stacy had confided in friends that they feared Drew would one day kill them and make it look like an accident. September 6, 2012, Peterson was convicted of murdering Kathleen. In February 2013, he received a 38-year prison sentence, but his criminal activities didn't stop there. While incarcerated, Peterson attempted to hire a fellow inmate to kill state's attorney, James Glasgow, the prosecutor who secured his conviction. The inmate wore a wire, capturing Peterson's plans. 2016, Peterson was convicted of solicitation of murder and sentenced to an additional 40 years in prison. Peterson's prison life has been anything but peaceful. Within a month of his arrival, another inmate attacked him, hoping to sell his belongings on eBay. His location has been moved multiple times for security reasons, and as of 2019, his whereabouts are kept secret. Despite overwhelming evidence, Peterson continues to maintain his innocence. In a 2024 interview, he told News Nation,
"I'm not wanting my children to believe that I killed their mothers. I don't want them thinking that of me. I didn't do that. I want them to know the truth and believe the truth."
But even his own children have doubts. His son Stephen told the Chicago Tribune in 2017 that he believes his father probably killed both Kathleen and Stacy. While Drew Peterson serves his 78-year sentence, Stacy's body has never been found. Her sister, Cassandra Kales, has never stopped searching, even claiming to have pinpointed Stacy's remains in the Chicago sanitary and shipping canal. Adding to the mystery, Peterson's former attorney has hinted that he knows exactly what happened to Stacy, but says he's bound by attorney-client privilege. Drew Peterson's case revealed how power and control could turn deadly behind closed doors. But years later, another officer would take that betrayal even further, turning his patrol car into a hunting ground.
Defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree, and punishment is set at 30 years. Count 33, sexual battery. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery.
June 18, 2014, the case that would shake the Oklahoma City Police Department to its core began. A 57-year-old woman driving through a quiet neighborhood was stopped by a seemingly routine patrol car. The officer who stopped her was Daniel Holtzclaw, a name that would soon become infamous. Holtzclaw wasn't just any officer. He was the son of a police lieutenant, a former college football player, and he had joined the force after his NFL dreams fell through. From December 2013 to June 2014, he used his badge and authority to prey on vulnerable African-American women, many with troubled pasts, criminal records, or histories of drug use. Holtzclaw methodically ran background checks, targeting those most likely to be disbelieved if they came forward. His first victim, as far as investigators could tell, was in December 2013, a woman handcuffed to a hospital bed, forced to perform oral sex. But it wasn't until that June night, when he pulled over a daycare worker, that his pattern unraveled. She had no record, no reason for him to stop her. Holtzclaw forced her to perform oral sex at gunpoint. But unlike his other victims, she immediately reported the assault. When Holtzclaw arrived for his next shift, detectives from the sex crimes unit were waiting. They already had suspicions, and the daycare worker's report matched a previous dismissed complaint. They seized his uniform, weapons, and patrol car, placing him on administrative leave. Soon, further investigation revealed his GPS consistently placed him at the scenes of similar complaints. Detectives found 12 more victims willing to testify. Holtzclaw's arrest came 2 months later. He faced 36 charges, including first and second degree rape, sexual battery, stalking, and more. The evidence was damning, especially the DNA match from one of his victims, a minor whose skin cells were found on his uniform near the zipper. The trial began in November 2015, and it became notable for its all-white jury. Despite aggressive defense tactics that aimed to discredit the victims, their stories remained consistent. Holtzclaw himself didn't deny encountering the women. He simply claimed innocence. The defense called just one witness, a former girlfriend who testified he had never shown sexually aggressive behavior. After 45 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Holtzclaw on 18 counts, including 4 of first-degree rape. He was eventually sentenced to 263 years in prison. The Oklahoma City police chief stated,
"We are satisfied with the jury's decision and firmly believe justice was served."
But Holtzclaw's presence vanished from the Department of Corrections website. For security reasons, his location became confidential. Some reports suggest he's held under an alias in an undisclosed Oklahoma State prison. He tried to appeal his conviction several times, even taking his case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, but every attempt was denied. This case exposed the horrifying reality of how some officers weaponized their authority. Holtzclaw deliberately targeted women he thought would never be believed, but his final victim's courage shattered that pattern. Holtzclaw preyed on victims from behind his badge. The next officer on our list used his to build a criminal empire from within the LAPD. February 7, 2001, the prison yard at a federal facility in Illinois erupted in chaos when David Mack, a once celebrated LAPD officer, now infamous for orchestrating a $722,000 bank heist, lay bleeding after a brutal stabbing attack. His journey from elite law enforcement to marked man behind bars was a twisted tale of corruption, betrayal, and consequences. David Anthony Mack grew up in Compton, California, and back then, he wasn't known for crime. He was known for speed. In high school, he was a track star, winning back-to-back state championships and earning a spot at the University of Oregon, running alongside future Olympians. But somewhere along the way, things changed. The kid who once lived for the track traded finish lines for fast money, and the streets of Los Angeles became his new playing field. By 1988, David Mack had traded his track uniform for a police badge. He joined the LAPD and rose fast through the ranks, eventually landing a spot in an elite unit called CRASH, short for Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. It sounded noble on paper, but the unit would later become infamous for one of the biggest police corruption scandals in U.S. history, the Rampart Scandal. For years, David Mack lived life on the right side of the law, or at least that's what everyone thought. But by August 1997, he had something else in mind, a plan that would take him far off it. His girlfriend, Erilyn Romero, was working as an assistant manager at a Bank of America branch near the University of Southern California. November 6th, Mack walked in like any other customer, saying he needed access to his safe deposit box. Romero buzzed him into the secure area, and that's when everything changed. In a split second, Mack turned on her, threw her to the floor, and cleaned out the vault, walking out with more than $722,000 in cash. The heist was meticulously planned. Romero had ordered double the usual cash to be on hand that day. For a month, investigators chased leads while Mack seemed untouchable. But then Romero cracked, confessing her role and implicating Mack as the mastermind. He was arrested in December 1997, but the stolen money and two other accomplices were never found. Mack's arrest sent shockwaves through the LAPD. Almost immediately, rumors started linking him to another officer, Rafael Perez, a key figure in what became known as the Rampart Scandal. That scandal would later expose widespread corruption inside the LAPD's anti-gang unit, from drug theft and evidence tampering to beatings and false arrests. Media reports suggested Mack and Perez had worked together robbing gang members and dealing drugs. But after a thorough investigation, these allegations couldn't be proven. Still, Mack's criminal career was far from isolated. Just 2 days after the bank robbery, he had traveled to Las Vegas with Perez. 9 months later, Perez was arrested for stealing cocaine from LAPD evidence facilities. The web of corruption grew wider, but concrete evidence linking the two remained elusive. In court, Mack faced overwhelming evidence. He was convicted and sentenced to 14 years and 3 months in federal prison. But even behind bars, his past caught up with him. One day, while jogging in the prison yard, several inmates attacked him, stabbing him multiple times and puncturing his lung. His lawyer reported that the assault stemmed from fellow prisoners learning about Mack's law enforcement background and his supposed betrayal of Perez. The prison system had little sympathy for a former cop. Mack was hospitalized briefly, then returned to general population. Whether he requested a transfer or special protection remains unclear. What is certain is that his reputation as a dirty cop made him a marked man behind bars. What's more, Mack's story doesn't end with his prison sentence. Over the years, his name surfaced in connection with the murder of rapper Notorious B.I.G. Legal documents and jailhouse informants claimed the stolen bank money was meant to pay a hitman for the murder. While these allegations never led to charges, they added another layer to Mack's complex legacy. Mack was released from prison in 2010, but to this day, he's never revealed where the stolen $722,000 went. The money is still missing, and so is the full truth about just how deep his criminal ties really ran. David Mack's story exposed corruption and greed within the force. But years later, another officer's actions would ignite nationwide outrage, not for theft, but for a killing caught on camera.
Taking a person's life is not something I take lightly at all. I never would have done this if I didn't think my life or somebody else's life was in danger.
October 20th, 2014, veteran Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke was on duty when his career and his life took a deadly turn. That night, he and his partner responded to reports of a 17-year-old Laquan McDonald carrying a knife and breaking into vehicles on Chicago's southwest side. What happened next would become one of the most controversial police shootings in modern American history. The initial police narrative painted a picture of McDonald as an immediate threat. According to reports, he was behaving erratically, refused to drop the knife, and lunged at officers. This version of events led to an internal ruling of justifiable homicide, and Van Dyke faced no immediate charges. But that story would soon unravel. A year later, a court-ordered release of dashcam footage shattered the original police account. The video showed McDonald walking away from Van Dyke, not toward him. Van Dyke opened fire, shooting McDonald 16 times, many of those shots hitting their target after McDonald had already collapsed to the ground. The video contradicted every official report and sparked a firestorm of protest and outrage across Chicago. The day the video went public, Jason Van Dyke was charged with first-degree murder. He was initially denied bail and held in Cook County Jail, though he was later released after posting bond. Soon after, the city of Chicago reached a $5 million settlement with Laquan McDonald's family. The case quickly became a flashpoint for racial justice activists, especially because Van Dyke was white and McDonald was black. The road to accountability was long. In November 2015, Van Dyke was indicted on 6 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of official misconduct. 2 years later, prosecutors added 16 counts of aggravated battery, 1 for every shot he fired. When the trial finally began in September 2018, it gripped both the city and the nation. October 5th, 2018, marked the historic verdict. Van Dyke was found guilty of second-degree murder and all 16 counts of aggravated battery, but acquitted of official misconduct. It was the first time in 35 years that a Chicago police officer was convicted of murder for an on-duty shooting. The conviction, however, came with controversy. The judge sentenced Van Dyke to just under 7 years, a total of 81 months, a sentence many felt was far too lenient for someone convicted of such a violent crime. Van Dyke's time behind bars was anything but quiet. Not long after being transferred to the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut, he was attacked by fellow inmates. The assault left him with head and facial injuries, and he was placed in 23-hour lockdown for his own safety. His wife, Tiffany Van Dyke, later spoke out, saying she feared for his life, claiming he was being targeted because he was a white police officer who killed a black minor.
I cannot bury my husband.
Despite serving less than half of his sentence, Van Dyke was released from prison in February 2022 due to good behavior credits. His early release reignited outrage among activists and community leaders, many of whom called for federal civil rights charges. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and several politicians urged the Department of Justice to pursue additional prosecution, but Van Dyke remained free. Van Dyke's case also ended up pulling back the curtain on deeper problems inside the Chicago Police Department. A U.S. Department of Justice investigation found a long pattern of excessive force and civil rights violations, especially against communities of color. the fallout sparked major reforms across the city, from overhauling police training to creating an independent oversight board and requiring officers to wear body cameras on duty. The fallout didn't stop with Jason Van Dyke. 3 other officers were charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice for trying to cover up the shooting. Though all were later acquitted, the case sent shockwaves through Chicago's political landscape, contributing to the defeat of Cook County State's Attorney Anita Alvarez and fueling public pressure that nearly cost Mayor Rahm Emanuel his job. In the end, Jason Van Dyke's case forced America to confront modern police misconduct. But long before his case, another cop, half a world away, was already building his own empire of corruption. May 9, 1945, Derek Arnold Ridgewell was born into an ordinary Scottish family in Glasgow, the son of a civil engineer and a housewife. Nobody could imagine that decades later, his name would have become synonymous with one of the worst police corruption scandals in British history. 1964, Ridgewell's career started when he joined the British Transport Police at just 19. He worked his way up through the ranks, starting as a dog handler in South London, then becoming a detective. By 1971, he was leading a brand new anti-mugging squad at Baker Street Station. On paper, he seemed like an ambitious officer fighting crime, but his true methods were far more sinister. Ridgewell's squad worked in plain clothes and aggressively targeted men, primarily black, accusing them of robberies they didn't commit. The pattern was always the same: confront, accuse, assault if there was resistance, fabricate confessions, and then testify against them. For years, his tactics went unchecked. One early case involved the Waterloo Four: 4 black men arrested and forced to sign confessions after Ridgewell's team claimed they were loitering with intent. Their case was eventually dismissed by a skeptical magistrate, but the warning signs were ignored. Then came the infamous Stockwell 6 case. February 1972, Ridgewell claimed 6 black men tried to rob him on the Northern Line. At trial, the only witnesses were police officers. 5 were convicted and sent to prison. The 6th was acquitted when it was revealed he couldn't read, and therefore couldn't have understood the confession he supposedly signed. This pattern continued with the Oval Four, members of a South London black political group accused of pocket-picking. And again, it involved plainclothes officers, false confessions, no physical evidence or named victims, and a white defense witness who was charged with assault by the police for trying to intervene. The 4 were convicted and sentenced to prison. Ridgewell's tactics extended to white victims as well. 1975, he arrested 3 white men, including Stephen Simmons, for allegedly stealing mail bags. Simmons lost his job, his car, his flat, and later, his health, all based on Ridgewell's fabricated evidence. Decades later, he discovered Ridgewell's conviction for similar crimes and successfully appealed. The corruption didn't stop at framing innocent people. Ridgewell led a massive operation targeting minorities at the Bricklayers Arms Depot, where he orchestrated the arrest of 12 employees, many of them immigrants. Again, forced confessions and planted evidence led to convictions, while Ridgewell himself was stealing from the same depot. 1978, his downfall finally came when one of his criminal partners tipped off authorities about his role in stealing over $1 million worth of goods. Ridgewell was convicted of conspiracy to rob, sentenced to 7 years, and began serving time at HMP Ford in West Sussex. When the prison governor asked why he did it, Ridgewell simply replied, "I just went bent." 1982, Ridgewell died in prison, officially of a heart attack, at just 37 years old. But the true scope of his crimes would take decades to unravel. In the years since his death, at least 13 victims have had their convictions overturned. But investigations now suggest Ridgewell may have framed over 100 innocent people. His actions destroyed lives, families, and trust in the justice system. Only in recent years has the British Transport Police begun to acknowledge the full extent of the damage. In 2021, Chief Constable Lucy Dorsey issued a formal apology to the black community of the United Kingdom, admitting the force's failure to act sooner against Ridgewell's criminalization of innocent people. To this day, investigators still search for other victims and potential co-conspirators. The British Transport Police now reviews every case linked to his name. But if you think Ridgewell's story is shocking, wait until you hear what happened next to another corrupt officer who thought he could get away with anything.
I'm the best, Ted. You're gonna fry, and I'm gonna be here. And I'll be the best, just like they said. The number one.
December 3rd, 1995. The body of Gerard Schaefer, once known as the Killer Cop, lay brutally stabbed in a cell in Florida State Prison. His throat slashed, both eyes and his reign of terror finally ending in the place where he once ruled over victims as a deputy sheriff. But this violence doesn't begin with his gruesome death. It starts with a young man whose twisted path led from law enforcement to becoming one of America's most chilling serial killers. 1946, born in Wisconsin, Schaefer's childhood was marked by abuse and chaos. His father was a verbally abusive alcoholic who favored Schaefer's sister, leaving Gerard feeling inadequate and isolated. By his early teens, he developed dark sexual fantasies involving bondage and violence against women. These disturbing urges soon became a grim reality. Schaefer's career ambitions started innocently enough. He studied to be a teacher, but his inability to follow authority and his attempts to impose his own moral values on students got him fired from 2 teaching positions. He was rejected from the priesthood and failed to keep his personal life together. His first wife divorced him and even cited extreme cruelty. Those should have been warning signs, but no. Gerard Schaefer went on to finally find a job that fed his need for control: law enforcement. 1971. Despite failing a psychological test, he became a police officer in Wilton Manors, Florida. His tenure was short-lived. He was soon fired for using police databases to contact women he had pulled over for traffic violations, asking them out on dates. Undeterred, he forged a letter of recommendation and secured a position as a deputy sheriff in Martin County, a decision that would have deadly consequences. July 21st, 1972, while on patrol, Schaefer picked up 2 hitchhikers, Nancy Trotter and Paula Wells. He warned them about the dangers of hitchhiking and offered to drive them to their destination. But instead of a friendly ride, he took them to secluded woods, tied them to trees with nooses around their necks, and threatened to sell them into white slavery. Fortunately, a police radio call forced him to leave the girls temporarily. They managed to escape and reported the incident at Schaefer's own police station. He was arrested, claiming he'd only meant to scare them, and was released on bail pending trial. But freedom only fueled his dark urges. 2 months later, while still awaiting trial, Schaefer abducted and murdered Susan Place, 17, and Georgia Jessup, 16. Their mutilated bodies would be discovered months later, buried near where he had threatened Trotter and Wells. The similarities between the cases led investigators to search his mother's home, uncovering a trove of incriminating evidence, including women's jewelry, diaries, teeth, and grisly stories detailing the torture and murder. Schaefer was convicted of murdering Place and Jessup, receiving 2 life sentences, but the evidence suggested he was responsible for many more deaths, possibly up to 28 victims. His method was horrifyingly consistent, as it relied on him using his authority as a cop to gain the victim's trust, then subjecting them to sadistic torture and murder, often involving bondage and hanging. He kept trophies from his victims, reliving his crimes through writings and photographs. Prison didn't stop Schaefer's manipulations. He ran mail fraud schemes, tried to sell fake nude photos, and acted as a jailhouse informant, earning privileges while making enemies among fellow inmates. And despite filing numerous lawsuits against authors who called him a serial killer, he privately boasted about his murders in letters and stories. His twisted sense of superiority even led him to claim that notorious serial killer Ted Bundy admired and envied him. December 3rd, 1995, fellow inmate Vincent Rivera had had enough. He ended Schaefer's life with 42 stab wounds. While the official reason was a dispute over hot water, many believe Schaefer was killed for being an informant. His death elicited little sympathy, and victims' families saw it as long overdue justice. Before his death, Schaefer became notorious in prison for his killer fiction. He wrote graphic stories about torture and murder, claiming they were just fiction, but investigators saw them as thinly veiled confessions. His former high school girlfriend, Sandra London, published these writings, revealing the depth of his depravity. In his own words, he described the thrill of having twice as much fun when killing 2 victims at once. But in the end, Gerard Schaefer met the same brutal fate he once inflicted on others, brutally murdered and begging for his life. But even in death, one mystery remains: how many victims he truly left behind.